sex was never meant to be shameful, disconnected, or performative, but sacred. Tonight, on Mind Over Matter, we step into a deeper, more conscious conversation with the radiant Satya Lila, a pioneer in secret sexuality. With over 30 years of experience, 15,000 plus client sessions, and thousands of lives touched through her teachings in the US and Japan. Satya invites us to reimagine sexuality as a living, breathing force of energy, one that empowers, enlivens, and elevates us far beyond the physical. This isn't about sex as we have been taught. This is about awakening who we truly are. So, Satya, you have taught sacred sexuality for decades. How do you
Mhm.
define it for someone hearing this concept for the first time?
Well, sacred sexuality is basically a philosophy that you bring to the act of lovemaking. It's a recognition of the power of the sexual energy to transform, to awaken, to expand your spiritual connection. And that shows up in lots of different ways. It's an overall theme, but it's also it shows up in like, for instance, looking at your partner as a vehicle for the god or the goddess, for that divine masculine or feminine energy. That's one way that you can make it a little bit more concrete is you thinking about how do you express the idea that sex is sacred. You can do um, invocations to ask the divine erotic energy to move through your body and caress your partner with that energy, or if it's a solo practice, to fill yourself up with that energy. So when I say sexual energy, what I mean is the kind of tingly, warm sensation that you get when you're sexually aroused. That is an expression of sexual energy, and there are practices that allow that energy to move up your spine, awakening other energy centers in your body, and ultimately um, propelling you into a connection with the divine.
Hmm. That's amazing. So, what was your own journey to seeing sex as not just physical, but as profoundly energetic?
Well, I I was in a relationship where sexual energy was really problematic between me and my partner. He was I had a lot of sexual energy and he was scared of it. He told me 20 years later. But at the time, what he told me was that I was too much. I was too big. I was too, my energy was too much, and I needed to rein it in. And so this is a relationship I really wanted to work. So I made a decision to try to make myself smaller so that I could meet him. And it's not a decision I recommend. It didn't end well, but at the time, it was the best that I could figure out to do. Um, and what happened was, sexual energy doesn't really respond well to trying to dampen it. It doesn't, if you try to dampen it or make it smaller, it's not selective. It just does. It just makes it nothing. And what that's what happened to me. He and I got less and less sexually active. We we went into a place where um, we not barely ever connected sexually, and when we did, I wasn't orgasmic. I did a really, really good job of making myself smaller, but I was suffering um, tremendously because of that, because it was dampening my life force. I was flattened energetically. And I was seeing a therapist who was familiar with sacred sexuality, and she encouraged me to go to a workshop. And the two of us, my partner and I, went together. And there was this weekend, it was a weekend workshop, and there was a weekend where things opened up again. There was joy, there was connection, there was intimacy, there was celebration. It was really beautiful. And I was so happy and so ecstatic that we could connect again. And um, he was during that weekend was a lot more available, and I we both felt a lot of hope. But when we went home and, time went by, he didn't want to go back again. I think his fears came up again, but, he didn't want to go back to the workshops and do more, which I really wanted to do. So we kind of limped along for, another year or so, and then we both mutually decided that it was too painful to stay together, and so we decided to separate. And there was sadness in that, but there was also a great deal of relief. And I started kind of being out in public again, dancing. And, I met a man who got interested in. And I remember that I was feeling like I was ready to move into sexual intimacy with him, and I just remember this moment the night before I was going to see him. I was so scared. I was afraid that my body didn't work anymore. I didn't know. I was afraid I didn't remember how to make love, or how to have an orgasm. And I just decided right then and there that I was going to go back to this sacred sex workshops on my own, not with a partner, because he wasn't really a partner yet. He was kind of just a rebound relationship to get me back into it again, and I'm grateful to him for that. But I knew that it wasn't a relationship that was going to last very long. But he was the catalyst. And so I did go back to the workshops. I started taking more workshops. I started assisting at the workshops after a while. And then I did a teacher training, learning how to teach sacred sexuality, was given by a couple who were therapists. So they taught a lot about how to work with the emotions that come up when sexual energy starts moving. And I have to say that I opened up so much. It's been a beautiful ride since then. I Instead of having someone telling me that I was too much, I started attracting partners who would say, "Is there more?" And that was like music to my ears to hear that, to hear someone encourage me to be bigger, to come out more, to have more sexual energy, that he could handle it, and that it was it was great. It was what he wanted. And I I have that was about 30 years ago, I guess. I guess a little bit longer than 30 years ago. And over that time, I've had a few partners who have each been just wonderful, wonderful people. I'm with my current partner now, who I've been with for 11 years. And even though we're in our 70s, we still have regular sexual communions and um, delight in each other's energy and use the energy as it's meant to be used as a catalyst for spiritual awakening. So I that's what motivates me to teach other people now, is because I've seen it in my own life, how much it changed my life.
That reframing, that our sexual energy is life force, completely shifts how we relate ourselves and others.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
I was just saying that reframing, that our sexual energy is life force,
Yes.
it completely shifts how we relate ourselves and others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, so why do you believe sexual energy is central to personal empowerment and inner peace?
Well, when your energy is flowing, your sexual energy is kind of like the fundamental energy that flows through your body. And when your energy is flowing, you are connected to a bigger flow of the universe. There's a there's a universal flow that governs everything that's happening on this earth. Um, it and when you are tapped into that flow, everything in your life works more easily. You have energy to magnetize your desires, your goals, things that you're working towards in your life. And there are techniques that help you focus that energy into a vision or a goal. It's called sex magic. And also, it just helps with synchronicity. Like, for instance, you want to um, just a recent example was I had on my list of things to do to contact a person who's in one of my groups, and before I could get around to doing it that day, she contacted me, and we had an instant, you know, spontaneous Zoom call to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And it was so easy. I didn't have to do a thing. I just had to respond to her reaching out to me. So, that's an example. Things like that happen all the time when I am connected to that divine flow that of sexual energy. So and there's a joy in running the sexual energy. It releases all kinds of hormones and brain chemicals that elevate your mood and um, give you a big smile on your face, and things just flow more easily. Things with your partner flow more easily. If you've been having wonderful lovemaking, you don't really care if they left the dishes in the sink. It's just, there's this what sense of well-being that is bigger than any of the little concerns or annoyances that might drag you down into a, a f- a despondent kind of mood, because the sexual energy is so much stronger and so much more um, powerful than those. It keeps you focused in the right direction, d- in positive thought patterns, in positive energy, and everything is just better when sexual energy is flowing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, what happens energetically or emotionally when we suppress or disconnect from it?
Well, everything gets flattened. Like your mood gets flattened. Um, your it's there's kind of a depression. The best definition of depression that I know is not much expression of emotions. There's a kind of a melancholy, a sadness that comes up because you're not expressing yourself. So um, there's no bubbly, happy, silly, playful kind of energy. It's just kind of like this flat line, monotone um, kind of expression and feeling that is kind of hard to go through life that way.
It's so clear in your words. This energy isn't dangerous, it's divine when honored with awareness.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, you have guided thousands.
hmm
What's one common myth about sexuality that holds people back from experiencing it as sacred?
I'd say the biggest thing is sexual shame. We have so much programming in our world to that's sexual energy is shameful, and it's so pervasive. You don't even realize sometimes how much you have it. There's there Here's an example of sexual shame that you might not even be aware of. There was a time when I was getting dressed to teach a workshop, and I put on some yoga pants that were kind of thin fabric, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I didn't wear underwear. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I thought, oh, I need to put some underwear on. You can see the shape of my yoni here. And that was a an action that was based on sexual shame. It's shameful to show your body. It's shameful to be naked. It's shameful to make love in, where someone can hear you. It's shameful to um, make orgasmic sounds where your neighbors can hear you. It's just pervasive, and that is just kind of like the background of most of modern culture. It permeates so much that we don't even notice it until we start paying attention to what is, how much sexual shame is there. And that's really a good first step to releasing it, is to notice when you are acting out of sexual shame. Like I noticed, even though I was teaching a sacred sexuality workshop in that story I told about my yoga pants, I didn't think I had sexual shame. I'd been teaching for 20 years at that point. Um, it was still there. I was still acting upon it. And part of my actions were based on how other people might feel discomfort, which isn't my sexual shame, but it's other people's sexual shame. So there's a art to not putting it into people's faces so much that they're uncomfortable, but having consideration for how much sexual shame there is while realizing that there's nothing shameful about it. So I'm not saying you need to be blatant and make other people feel uncomfortable, but at least notice how when an action is based on shame and reclaim it for yourself. This is not shameful. This is a holy energy. This is a beautiful life force life-affirming energy. Saying that to yourself can be really useful in releasing the sexual shame that everyone carries.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So, what's one truth you wished everyone knew about good, conscious sex?
Well, good conscious sex is a holy act. I think that's the basic message that I have. It's a holy act. It's a divine worship that it's a vehicle for union with the divine energies, our source energy, or God, or goddess, or whatever you want to call that universal force, consciousness that is where we come from and where we go. Sexual energy is like the rocket fuel that propels the fire that propels the rocket upward into the heavens. And that happens in our own bodies as well. It's a holy act.
It's liberating to know the depth, presence, and energy, not performance, are the real magic.
Yes, yes. The presence and the energy is crucial and the most um, important part of a connection, either with yourself or with a partner. Um, that a, a sacred sexual connection has no agenda. It's not, most people in modern culture, when they have a sexual connection, there's a predictable pattern. There's first you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you have intercourse, then you have an orgasm, then you're done, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in a sacred sexual connection, it doesn't necessarily, build, peak, and drop. There's a presence, a being in the moment and being with what the moment carries, that where you might build energy for a while and then you might slow down and just breathe together or relax and lie still for a while. And that energy that you have built doesn't go away. It just goes quiet for a moment. And then when you start building the energy again, it's right there and you can start building on it, making it even higher. And you can build and drop and build and drop and build and drop. And that leads to a wonderful experience that I call a valley orgasm. A peak orgasm, in contrast, a peak orgasm builds to a peak and drops and you're done. A valley orgasm builds and drops a little, builds a little more, drops a little bit. There's rounded hills instead of peaks, and there's a lot of hills and valleys. And that quiet, slow, excuse me, I need to take a drink. That quiet, slow, meditative, being in the moment kind of experience leads you to an opening that is far beyond what you could imagine if you're just rushing forward, like trying to grab a goal. There's a instead of the grasping, addictive quality of craving, there's an openness and a relaxation and um, a openness to whatever happens, whether it's a delightfully high, joyful experience or whether you something gets triggered and you start having tears and sadness. It's all part of lovemaking. It's all part of the experience in a sacred sex connection.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So let's talk practice. What are some ways people can begin to cultivate sacred sexual energy in their daily lives?
Well, I have lot of good resources on my website that I'll spell it because it's hard to spell. It's satyalila.info. SATYALILA.info. And there's a page on that website called Free Stuff. And on there are some ways to prepare for a sacred sexual connection, and also some guided audio meditations that help to guide you with a partner or you with yourself in a mirror. Either way, it's very powerful. It's a guiding you into a deeper connection and a deeper intimacy. So those are some ways to get started. If you're really wanting to have more guidance, I do offer a free sexual communion gateway session. And in that session, I help you find what your challenges are with your sexuality and create a vision for how you can what you would like instead. And I'll give you my best recommendations for how to get started towards that vision. And that's a free um, phone call session. And it's given out of my desire to be of service. There's no pressure and no strings attached, just service. So those are some ways that you can get started if this is intriguing you and you want to go deeper.
Mm-hmm. That ripple effect from sensual awareness to spiritual alignment is breathtaking.
Mm, yes.
Your sexual energy is not separate from your spirit, it is your birthright, your brilliance, your aliveness. Deepest gratitude to Satya Lila for helping us unlearn, remember, and reawaken. If tonight's episode opened something sacred in you, share it with someone ready to embrace the fullness of who they are. And remember, good sex isn't just physical, it's energy, it's presence, it's truth. So until next time, breathe deeper, love slower, and keep honoring the sacred spark within.